I think that's a great quote. This time.
We had a marvelous period before the break. Well, we were really listening to human beings seeking to understand themselves. It was beautiful. What do you think Oakeshott means by disentangling oneself?
I love that. Finding your own inconsistencies, understanding what the contradictions, trying to differentiate what's closer to reality and what is not. I think it has to do with all that. Trying to filter out things that are no longer useful, things that are useful to life. I think that this entangled word is very important there. You know, like a knot, you have to try to...
How do you say disentangle in Spanish?
Desenredar.
Desenredar.
Desenredar. Eso es mejor.
Yes.
Desenredar.
Desenredar. It's a tough knot to entangle.
I use this quote to my students in the seminar, and they talked about disentangle. Usually most of the obvious, disentangle from your cell phone, disentangle from the urgencies. And we talked about it, we could really stay for 2 hours. But I was amazed that one of the students said something like, disentangle our mind, to have an open mind. Because you can leave the cell phone and the computer and be sitting here, but maybe your mind is someplace else. So the disentangle from the urgencies was to be a full person in the seminar.
Fully present.
Fully present, yeah.
And there's another entangle that we have, and we have that about that we have something we want to say. We're listening, we're preparing to talk, and that's something that blocks our conversation, but we're not listening.
Something urgent, we want to say. Students who are not used to having a group conversation find it difficult to speak one at a time. And they have impulse control. So they're always interrupting each other. Or ignoring what's been said before and going forward with their monologue. And that does relate to this sense of urgency, doesn't it? I want to say what I want to say now.
Okay.
Right? What other urgencies? Why is it the here and now? That's sort of peculiar. Urgencies of the here and now.
The moment.
I think that's important.
The day-to-day, the moment, the day-to-day that we will live, and it's very difficult to disentangle oneself from the day-to-day.
But I
And
think
to
it has
be present.
Sorry.
I also understand it is to be present. Because you're thinking, oh, I do this, and I have, what time are we leaving, and blah, blah. And we stop listening because we're in our monologue.
Inner monologue.
Inner monologue. And, yeah.
I was going to say that when you are in the day-to-day, in the here and now, you have to make choices, you have to act, you have to decide, but you have very little time to reflect on what you're doing. Maybe you might make some decisions that you're going to regret, but you have to, because you have to make the decision. But the invitation is to try not to have the urge to decide something, but be able to reflect upon the ideas, to listen, to reflect. And giving your time, not with the urgency of having to make a decision about it, but to understand the concepts, what is it that it means to you, and so forth.
Day to day is about choices that we, in a way, know, and learning is about new choices we don't know.
Just
The way they're
Preparing for future choices.
there are two words that are kind of
Challenging.
contradictory in the here and now and the forever seek. So forever sounds like a continuous, but the other thing is just a minute. For a time being, the here and now kind of says that the human being is still trying to understand, like we were talking earlier, but just for a moment try to pay attention and understand. It happens all the time, but just for a moment try to focus.
I want to go back to what Florencia just said. The here and now is about the known. That's what I hear you saying.
So choices that in a way, we know that they tend to repeat. So they are new, but they belong to an environment or a context we know, and they're not challenging for us. But we need to prepare for different types of choices, and that requires introspection, listening, maybe.
The
Humility, maybe.
now, the here and now is really defined by what we know, right?
History.
Also, it could mean, for example, since it says urgencies of the here and now, to get involved in a very deep conversation. It's a tendency, I think, that when you discuss a topic, trying to discover solutions for very specific situations. For example, in finance or economics, how do you solve the crisis in Europe? What do you do today in terms of the banks in Europe? And I think that's a problem of the discussion, because if you don't get into the premises, into a deep discussion, you are only trying to fix something that is urgent, but that's not the way the discussion should be. It should be very deep in terms of the concepts, premises, not just a very specific situation.
Something that I get from what both of you are saying is this idea of the here and the now being seen from paradigms that we've already acquired and are familiar with, and then when we learn something new, we have to step out to explore a paradigm that we don't understand yet, and then perhaps relate it. But in order to do that, we might have to, in a way, step out or take a break from seeing everything through the particular lens that we're used to seeing it from.
And I understand that also as disentangle, in that weird of letting your paradigms. It's also like a disentangle to let go, and
I think a concrete example can be when we take an author on their own terms. Like a lot of times when we're reading something, people will try to use their own definitions, and the text won't make sense with our own definitions of particular words. And so we have to drop that paradigm, and we have to temporarily adopt a new one, understand what the author means by those specific terms, and then we can make sense of something new. But in order to do that, we have to, for a moment, let go of our previous conception of those definitions.
And that's very important, because it means also not being dogmatic about your own previous beliefs. If you want to really have a conversation, you are trying to not to impose your ideas to others, but also to be open to accept others' ideas.
What do you think are the most challenging entanglements that our students face? How are they entangled in our classrooms? With what are they entangled? From what would you like your students to disentangle?
From the urgencies of the year.
What is that?
I would say this is the first thing. It's
Yeah,
so
the cell
difficult
phone.
for them.
The cell phone.
It's easier for us than for them. We could even talk about, can you really leave this for 2 hours? And some of them would say, no, I can't. It's impossible for me. And we kept talking, why? If there's an emergency. I'm sure that if there's an emergency, Daniela will know about it. And she will interrupt the whole thing. I'm sure about it, because that's the way we grew up. whenever there was an emergency, someone will come over. But I would say this is one of, because it tangles back to the urgencies. This is,
Another tangle is the short term. I think that is the case of the urgencies. In our students, for example, in the MBA students, it's very difficult to discuss principles and concepts. They always want a very specific application for tomorrow in their work, and they don't. It's very difficult for us to make them think in a more abstract way and to accept, for example, ideas or concepts that are not useful right now, but may be useful later, or maybe not. Maybe it's just the process of thinking and learning by themselves.
I would like to add on that and challenge Carlos' point, because the students come as an audience, so that's the first thing we have to untangle.
And it's appropriate to be on your cell phone in an audience.
Because, yeah,
Yeah.
It's very appropriate.
and if you miss something, you can go back and ask or
Sure.
ask somebody else, because it's transferred to you. So if you are part of the cast, you will feel uncomfortable answering the phone in the middle of the show. So I like the idea of having all those distractions and being your choice, not to be distracted, and not to say, okay, like an addict that's going to put away all the, so I cannot use them because I don't have them, I don't have access. If it's mine, you don't know where it's going to be. If he's waiting for the professor to tell what to do, you can hide all the phones, computers, iPads, and whatever, and that's the challenge.
So how do we do to change the student from an audience to a cast if he's expecting to get the lessons for the day from the professor. He's not expecting to get the lesson for himself, and he thinks that he paid to be told the lesson. Not he didn't pay in order for him to find out the lesson.
I would say he paid to learn.
They figure that, so you're not gonna teach?
Huh?
They tell you like, so you're not gonna teach?
Yeah, so you're not gonna teach. So you're not gonna, yeah. So he has, it's very difficult to go from one to the other.
That's the first, I would say that the first thing they have to disentangle from. Because if they don't accept that,
From the paradigm.
I think you have to disentangle the teacher.
You're right.
And it's a preconception that comes from kindergarten, in which, it's been brought 12 years into high school, then 4 more years in college. So it's a 16-year experience in which he has been told the lesson that he has to learn. And now, this guy says, I have to find out for myself what the lesson is. That's a huge task before us.
So hopefully they learn over time that they're not by themselves. Learning is an individual responsibility, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the marvelous discovery in the Socratic practice classroom is that you are surrounded by teachers. It's not that you're giving up one teacher. Right? It's not that there's not one teacher in this room, it's that there are 13 teachers in the room. And really to discover the potential that those have around you for your learning. But I love what Cassandra just said about how the teacher must disentangle.
Yeah,
You know,
and
the
you have to-
urgency that teachers feel is what? I mean,
Curriculum.
curriculum. I must cover the next thing on my curriculum.
Yes. Or also disentangle the students from the teacher. It's very difficult. If you have a Socratic room, it's very difficult to get the students discuss with each other. They always look for approval of the teacher, of the facilitator, so disentangle the teacher from the students is difficult.
and also from the teacher side, because the question was what we want the students to disentangle from, that's why. But if we think of what we as teachers have to disentangle from, is helping the student. Don't let the students struggle. Because they start to struggle with some consequence, and we quickly go and jump in and give the answer. That's something we have to let them struggle.
That's what I learned from you in the logos. That I used to jump and give the answer, and one had to keep a lower profile so that they find the answer, and that's extremely difficult because when it's used to the contrary. When it used to be, you get a question and you immediately are trained to answer.
Save them from the error and wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And no chances of
And they are only getting the same kind of behavior that they use in society in the classroom, because that is the issue of paternalism. We think that we should help the students, and that's the same issue of the welfare state. They need help, they need to be helped.
And that's why what Florencia said is quite true. They say, you're not going to teach us, you're not going to tell us what the lesson is, and the problem is compounded by the fact that if he didn't read, if he didn't do his prior reading before getting to the class, he's not going to find out the lesson in a million years.
But there's a real connection there.
Let's see.
Why don't our students read? It's precisely because they've had teachers that step in
Okay.
and try to make them read for them. I asked a group of students last semester what their definition of a great teacher is. What's your definition of a great teacher? A great teacher is a teacher that explains the reading so well you don't have to read it. And they were dead serious. I mean, that is what they want. You're doing a good job in front of the classroom. If you explain the reading so well, I don't have to read it. And that's the paradigm. And so it's, based on that, it's no wonder our students don't read. They're expecting you to do that.
I would like to add on what you're saying, because that's what I fear so much of student evaluations. Because if you don't do that,
You're a bad teacher.
You're a bad teacher.
That it's a 16-year paradigm.
Or
All the way from
Or
kindergarten.
20.
There's more than one way.
Or more.
There's more than one way of being a bad teacher. You can actually be a bad teacher. That's one way of being good. You become really bad.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I was reading my evaluation, I think 2 days ago, and I was really trying to understand what it meant, all the rubrics that they have to assess from us. And one of them, I think, is the teacher explains the topics really well.
Exactly.
Is the teacher on
I
time?
want to explain the topics really well,
Exactly.
and I don't want to get an A for that.
Well, part of our challenge in creating a shift in the culture of learning at UFM is the evaluation process for teachers. Until that evaluation process shifts the student's attention away from the professor to the learning process, to their own individual learning process, it's going to be very difficult to get professors to change how they teach.
We, just for your information, we did change our evaluation forms at the business school.
Oh, super.
You
Super.
did?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we have a different evaluation form for the seminars, the logos, that has less and less emphasis on the teacher and more on the process. And the other one, it was changed from the regular one, but still has a little bit more focus on the teacher.
And that's the one in this middle school had sections on the learning environment,
Yeah, if the students evaluate the kind of questions that the teacher asked, so not the explanation.
Yeah.
But I think that's really great because the students become aware of what's important, or become aware of that shift
Yeah.
in
Yes.
Well, and if you have a really good evaluation
And we can always
form like
change it.
that, if you give it early on,
Yeah.
like after the first or second week,
Yeah.
it becomes a real learning experience because they realize, I should really be looking for these other elements in my learning environment and not just whether the show is entertaining.
Yeah. It has questions like, did the process facilitate my learning? And we're working a lot in having the students really do the evaluation form in a, a really profound way. For example, in the contract we're signing, it says, I commit myself to fill out the evaluation form in a serious way. Because usually sometimes they just click, oh. So that will
That's
hopefully,
really.
and then we're gonna publish the evaluation forms for each facilitator for the next time he gives a seminar. So all the students are gonna be able to look at it and see what the other.
And what is interesting about the cast is that we had this experience of the contract from Acton MBA, but we think that in the case of Acton, they signed the contract between the students and the teacher. So we decided to change that, and the contract is between the students. And we try to emphasize that it's the concept of cast. They are signing a contract with all the students, and the teacher is like a judge, just trying to, not enforce, but to see that the contract.
Do we have that already?
Yes, in laws. And in some laws, the negotiation of the contract is for 1.5 hours maybe, just the contract, in order to let them realize that the contract is between them and the teacher is just a facilitator
Or the teacher is one of them.
of one of them.
One of them.
Yeah, one of
Part of the cast.
yeah.
And have you tried for them to write a contract with themselves?
Like
With
action
themselves?
does, no.
No, because I think part of the disentangle that we have is the grading system. It's really a bad situation that it doesn't help to be on the here and now that the code says, because they just want to have a good grade. You know,
have
they're not
grades.
they're
We
not
don't have
worried.
grades in the
Okay.
seminar.
Yeah, but I was talking
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
that's-
general,
that's
but
important.
I think that the issue here would be that for the students to grade themselves, you know, to have like a contract with how much you expect to learn in the semester, what you are involved in your learning, more than
Yeah.
because if we don't break that system of grading, we still are going back to the same thing.
It's quite right. I had a student that came 2 weeks ago, that came up to me, and he came with his exam in hand, and he wanted me to review a question which had been graded 3 instead of 4 out of 100 points. Or the exam was 100 points. He was arguing for 1 point. So I took the exam, and yeah, I'll review it. I said in the following class, I said, yes, I did review it, but I didn't continue. Because I reviewed the question that you asked me to review, but I reviewed the whole exam also, which my auxiliar had corrected. And I said, you ended up with less points. She went white. I mean, she literally went this color. I said, you ended up with less points. She was very lenient on you. And she didn't know what to say. You know, she was dumbfounded. And I said, okay, no, I didn't change your grade, but so here it is. I'll give it back to you. She was worried about 1 point. So there's something mentally wrong that for her, it wasn't the learning experience. She could care less about the learning experience. It was that 1 point out of 100.
It's still the 20 years you were talking about.
It's in 20 years.
We're a little bit off on a tangent, but as long as we're there, I just want to talk about this concept of mastery learning.
No, but I don't know if we have time, because I do want to know how to change my students from an audience to a cast.
Sure.
I want
And grading is part of it. No, I don't
The
think
grading is
I don't think
part of
it's
it?
a tangent.
You want the answer.
It's
I
just-
want the answer. Yeah, I don't want to wait too much time.
I have a curriculum to cover.
You have
It's
to
urgent.
disentangle.
I want the answer. You said it right, Cassandra.
It's like-
I gotta leave out of here with the answer.
You want the recipe.
It's delaying my curricular plan. It's going to impose on you from above. No, this is great, and we really want to get into evaluating this notion of grading. But just to plant the seed, thinking about mastery rather than passing is another big paradigm shift. Students have been trained since they're very, very young to worry about passing. And we give them the criteria about what you must do, the minimum you must do to pass. And of course, that's what most of them strive for. Not everyone, some are very concerned about their learning. But let's give an example. If you have let's say a research essay, and you have a well-defined rubric about what's valuable, you've got a great opening paragraph, all the different criteria about what it means to write a good essay. Maybe 10 points are devoted to the bibliography, right? Evaluating the bibliography. Well, if the student hands in the essay, and they've done everything well on that rubric, but they don't have attached the bibliography, they've got a 90 on that essay. Now, for a lot of students, that's great. That's a low A, right? They certainly passed. And for most of them, they're done. I mean, been there, done that. Got my 90. I passed. Gone to other things, and they haven't done it. They haven't demonstrated that they know how to do bibliography. Right? Mastery learning is not about grading. So if you get this beautifully written essay and it's missing the bibliography, it gets sent back. You don't have the bibliography. You still need to do that. Right? If they hand it back to you and the bibliography is done inappropriately, it's not done correctly, then it gets handed back. The work never goes away. You establish the standard, you write the rubric, and the work is done when you've achieved the standard and everything in the rubric.
So you will get 100 if you master the learning.
So really, everyone is getting 100, if you want to call it that. But the fact is, they're just demonstrating mastery. They've demonstrated mastery according to the standards established. Can we really create a learning environment where students are expected to meet the standard established?
What ways have you found effective to ensure that?
You want the answer?
What ways have you found effective to ensure that students, because they know they can just do it and do it and do it again in order to achieve mastery, that they commit themselves and push themselves to get it right the first time and not just turned in a sloppy piece of work knowing that they'll just go back and fix it?
In fact, I have been using more or less that type of evaluation or assessment in my courses. And it's kind of difficult because it demands a lot of time. But usually a student turns in a improvement project, for example. And when I tell my colleagues who help me to grade, or not to grade, but to assess the work, it's that you browse through the document and you have a feeling that it was turned in just to turn it in, or there are a lot of missing parts on it. So we don't grade it. We just tell them, look, I think it's not complete yet. We see that you have these parts missing, so please turn it again when you have it ready.
But I think that the point of that is that when you grade, you are not sacrificing time with quality, and if you start that process of going back and forth, then you are spending a lot of time.
Yeah, that's my point.
But they can come as long as you let them come back. So the question is how can you make them try to do the best on the first time, and then just do, but not.
But I mean, it's, for example, I had problems turning grades. In a sense that I'm kind of critiqued that I tend to last beyond the date that I have to put in the grades. And at least put the pass or didn't pass for students. But the reason why most of the time I take time is because students haven't finished doing the work. And it's not necessarily that they are being lazy or whatever. It's because they're having difficulty doing it right in their working environment. They're actually trying to do something good, or something that is worthy for them. So when I tell them, no, you have to turn in your work by tomorrow morning at 6, you are actually promoting for them to turn you in whatever they have ready by that time. But if you tell them, okay, I talk to them and I ask them, okay, why haven't you turned in? And they tell me, look, I am implementing this change, but I haven't finished the collected data. I need 3 more days to be able to have at least 3 more points so I can analyze them. That sounds to be reasonable.
But we do live in a world of scarcity, and time being one of those scarce resources. So I think it's appropriate to set deadlines. And mastery learning is basically a pass-fail situation. So you're either going to do the work to standard or you're not, right? And if you don't do it to standard by the deadline, then you don't pass the class. I mean, that's really the issue. So those deadlines have to be well established, well-defined rubrics for what is quality work, well-defined standards for what is quality work, so there's no mystery. Now, if students can't achieve, if none of your students can achieve that standard,